Welcome to Beyond the Outer Realm, everyone. The spin-off show of the main show, The Outer Realm, which airs on Wednesday and Thursday evenings. Doesn't it just feel like an afternoon with that really chillaxing intro? Anyway, yeah. So we are still broadcasting live here in the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. So today I'm pleased to welcome I always call him our grand poobah, but realistically, he's the owner of the network, and he's also our producer and so on. And he's a lot of fun. Joe and I used to do the Gray Zone Uncensored, of course, and we basically had a lot of requests for it to come back. But you're going to be able to still find it. They're going to be coming out soon. But in the meantime, we thought we would do something a little bit different and do an uncensored open mic, which will cover a lot of ground and it'll be a lot of fun. So without further ado, Joe Montaldo.
Hello, everybody. How y'all doing?
Yeah.
Let me put my glass on so I can actually see what the hell I'm going on.
Uh-oh.
Weird. I see Rumble's being weird. But anyway, we'll have to wait and see what it's doing.
Yeah, so is your...
no, Ruku already know what it's doing, so I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But, hey, Dolly, how you doing, sweetie? Dolly, you got to come on the show. Come hang out with the boys one day.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
I was talking about UFO Undercover. You don't want to come out on the other shows.
Hey. Hello,
Preston might divorce you if you come on the chat. So.
Oh boy.
you might want to stay away from that one.
Yeah. Maybe.
Heidi's over there.
Ooh, gang's all here. Everybody's coming in.
That show is insane, people. If you want to see insanity, that's the place to go. This one's getting close to insane too. So we've scheduled like there's probably 3 shows in a network that are a little, we'll just say, not normal as the rest of the shows in the network. They're designed to be more entertaining. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of information in them, but they're designed to be more entertaining in general.
Oh, they're entertaining, I promise you.
Yes, that's what they're designed for, really. I mean, that's truly what they're designed for.
Yeah.
It's we get a lot of compliments every now and then. We get some, somebody who's kind of nasty, but for the most part, we get pretty much all pretty much compliments, which I'm really happy to see. And you never know what's going to come on. Now the Gray Zone should be back. It was going to be back yesterday, but me and YouTube had we'll just say there was some frustration there and leave it at that. It should be back by the weekend, but it's only pay for listen. Yes, it's only pay for listen. So it's going to be mid-level pay for listen.
50 something, almost 60 different segments of that. So
there's some really good stuff in there. I mean, we crossed some fabulous topics. I mean, if it was a serious topic, we crossed it. And Michelle does fabulous research, so the shows were well researched. I knew a good bit about the topic matter to start off with, so it really makes for a much more interesting show. But like I said, it's pay for listen, and it'll be mid-range pay for listen, so it'll be the middle one. The first one's just a bunch of icons that you can't find anymore on the network. They're retired icons, I guess is what we'll call them. It's stuff that we either isn't on the network anymore or isn't being used on the network anymore. One or the other. It's stuff like that. So y'all will be able to go check those out. There'll be a lot of fun.
And there will be new Gray Zone episodes.
Yes, there will be. Michelle and I are working on that. There's a particular episode I have gotten quite a lot of writing about. There was 2. There was one we did on the Shroud of Turin. And it was funny because
that has to be updated.
Yes. Well, it does. But John DeSalvo and I had done an episode on that because he was one of the guys who had worked on it. And then, I hate to say this, and literally, he was one of the people. He was one of the crews that worked on that. He's actually Sir John DeSalvo, and he's that and the Egyptian things. I hate to say this, but Michelle actually did better research than he did. So. Even though he was one of the crew members, and we discussed the Shroud of Turin in great detail, Michelle's research was just more thorough all the way around. So It carried a better show. It was a better show. Plus, we weren't trying to kill each other doing the show like John and I were doing the other show.
That's because Michelle has no ego.
Oh well, we can't now. Come on now. I'm only wearing flip flops. If you can be telling big stories like that,
It
we can
makes a
put my
big
boots
difference.
on.
I'm just saying.
Oh man.
But
But
today,
John was a little insane. Yes.
you know what? It's an uncensored open mic. So it may or may not be where it's supposed to be, where you're used to finding it, meaning you'll have to go to other alternative places. You all know what I mean, right? Because certain platform, the shall remain nameless, gets a bit ornery if you try to redirect people. So
Yes, they have been nice lately, but we're not going to take
I
that.
know, but they don't like
We're
people
not
being
going to take that.
redirected. So, I'm just gonna go and yeah. Just
Oh,
so
a
y'all
couple of
know,
times now,
everybody
yeah.
knows the drill. Everybody knows the drill, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Well, a couple of times now, they've had to go find us on Rumble because the other network decided that, for whatever reason, whatever we were talking about, it's usually not talking. It's usually
hi.
music, but
See, Heidi
sometimes it's
knows.
talking.
Yeah, Heidi knows.
One of the hosts decided they were going to talk about a forbidden topic. Which we'll just say the last two numbers are 19. We're not going to say any more than that. And let's just say they took us off air 3 different times. Now, what's funny is they only take you off air for like a half hour, an hour, and then they put you back. I don't even know. I'm
I
not even
can't.
trying.
I can't
Um,
even. I
I
can't
can't even
even.
figure out what the hell is going on there. I
But
just
with
so
that
we
being
try to stay
said,
away from this with those topics.
well,
Besides,
that's why it's uncensored and it doesn't usually stay there. But it gives us as the people really love these shows, so we like to offer them up because we know we have it. Go to all the archive sites and such. But today, we'll talk. We'll let Joe kind of go crazy. Uncensored UFO disclosure, ET contact, hidden knowledge, which that's really wide with Joe because that could go in any direction.
yes, that could go any that can seriously go in
So
any direction.
yeah, I just kind of left it wide open to see where Joe wants to take it all, and let's just take a little roller coaster ride and see where we end up.
Well, I mean,
you know,
that's the thing when you get into uncensored, it could go anywhere. So, just recently we were talking about abductees who cannot seem to get past a certain point in their life, meaning that they understand that they've been taken, they understand that there's been things that have happened to them, but at some point they freeze it. I don't know if it's because they're scared to go forward, or maybe it's more of people are kind of nasty. Even today, people get a little nasty when you say, "Hey, I've been taken by extraterrestrials." People get a little upset. They're just kind of like, "Oh, aliens aren't real, really." So, for anybody who thinks aliens are not real, James Webb Telescope took a new picture yesterday or day before yesterday of the known universe. People, the amount of galaxies in this picture is ridiculous, and they're not just little. You can see them. I mean, they're nice size. It's ridiculous. There's
Mhm.
100 million galaxies in there, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. They think there's 100 trillion galaxies inside of what we can see. That's not all of them. That's just what we can see.
Mhm.
And people think there's not life. So remember, it's 100 trillion galaxies, which means there's 100 trillion planets in each one, and yet there's no life. Oh, I don't know, people. I'm thinking we're selling ourselves short. And then one of my favorite topics, of course, is Mars. Science has just came out and said, you know what? They think we're from Mars. They don't even think we're from Earth anymore. They have finally. I've been preaching this topic for 3 decades. Finally, mainstream comes out and says, "Ooh, it looks like the building blocks of Mars the building blocks of Earth may have come from Mars." There's a lot of things about our body and the way our biological clock ticks that seems to be not from Earth. Meaning, like, okay, the optimal body temperature for Earth to work in, for humans to work in, is 73 degrees Fahrenheit. On Earth, 55 million years ago, it was 83 degrees. On Mars, it was 73 degrees, which is optimal body temperature. But it's more than that. Our the way our body works, so our biological clock works on a 24 and a quarter hour day. So most humans already know that Earth is set on a 23 and three-quarter hour day. Uh-oh. Well, it's a half hour different. Wait. How can we be from this planet and our body be set on a 23 and three-quarter hour day? That doesn't work. But Mars has a 24 and a quarter hour day, which happens to be what our body is set to. So you got to stop and think, okay, there's more evidence to suggest that we came from there. Now, it doesn't mean we're Martians by any means. It means that we're Earthlings with Martian descent. Would just be like if you were Italian, you came to America. Well, you're an American of Italian descent. So it's kind of the same thing with Mars. It's just, it looks like that our original DNA came from there, which is interesting because you got to wonder why Gaia puts up with our ass. Since we're not actually from here, and sometimes Gaia looks like she thinks we're not from here. Like, get off my planet. Go back to where you came from.
Go home.
Yeah, that's right. Stop screwing my planet up. That's right.
Yeah, you guys don't know how to play nice. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
It's interesting to watch it all, and it also means differently when you start thinking about extraterrestrials, because I met with Buzz Aldrin and Edgar Mitchell in Washington, D.C. about 10 years ago. I was having lunch with him at the Washington Press Club, and we were talking about the moon and is there life on the moon. Edgar, which is the guy who ran around, not Edgar, Buzz is the guy who ran around for a decade saying that we never went to the moon, sits down with Edgar and we're talking. He goes, "Oh no, there's a base." He said, when Neil Armstrong told me, I said, "Oh, you full of bull. There is no base on the moon." He said, and then Edgar got to actually see it up close and personal. He said, a couple of us seen it from the Apollo, from the ship in orbit, because it orbits the entire moon, dark side and light side, which, by the way, the dark side isn't dark. There's actually light over there, but we just call it the dark side for some reason. So there seems to be extraterrestrials. Now, we have now had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 astronauts say that there is something on the moon. We've had 3 tell us that it said, "Don't come back. We're not ready to be there yet." So if you're thinking they're on the moon, then probably they're on Mars too. I mean, Mars is the next inhabitable planet in the solar system, so why not have a little base there as well? It makes me nervous thinking that they're building bases in our solar system, and you have to wonder for what reason. And then we hear about big ships, motherships being parked out by Jupiter or near the sun. So about a decade ago, there was a photo taken of the sun by NASA that showed what we would consider Borg cubes. So they're just sitting there. They're just cubes. And there's 2 here and there's 1 down here and there's this portal looking thing in between them. Now, NASA swears that this was a problem with the camera, but another camera took the same picture. So it can't be a camera problem, Ken. It's got to be something else. Also, there was a sphere picture taking of what looks to be a very large gray ship out around Jupiter, bigger than any of its moons. Bigger than our moon, by the way. That's why it stays out there. These ships, the reason they don't come close to us is because the gravitation field of these ships would affect our planet. So, when people tell me about Nibiru, well, Nibiru could exist, but it just never could come through the solar system, get anywhere near Earth, because it would destroy Earth. A planet 5 times the size of Earth, getting anywhere close to it would destroy the planet. We couldn't take the tidal forces from the gravitation fields would destroy us. So we know it's never gotten close to Earth. Even if it existed, we know it never got close to Earth. Now, there is an asteroid belt, which has debris of about enough debris to make a planet about 5 times the size of Earth. What's interesting about it is probably way back when it was probably Nibiru. Jupiter probably grabbed it on one of the orbits and crushed it. But when it crushed it, it destroyed Earth, Mars, and Venus. We all died around the same time, between 55 and 65 million years ago. Venus, we died from a meteor crack. Mars died from a meteor impact. And Venus, they think, died from a meteor impact. So when this planet died or blew up or whatever happened, it's in chunks. We know that because there's 2 chunks of it right now as moons around Mars. People think that's, but those came from the asteroid field. So you got to wonder. And then for years and years, we said, "Oh no, it was a planet that didn't form." And all of a sudden, we started finding materials that can only be made in planetary when a planet is being created. So now we know that it was a planet at one time or another. And it was a damn big planet at one time or another. You know, when people talk about the Greys, reptilians, and humans, as far as we know, that was their 3 planets. The 5th planet, the 4th planet, and the 2nd planet. You know, we always talk about they come from way out in deep space, but we don't actually know that. And since there were 3 other inhabitable planets in our solar system, it makes you have to stop and think, well, maybe they're from this solar system. Maybe that's why they have such an interest in us goofy humans. And that and the fact that, you know, we share their DNA, which means that one day, somewhere in the future, we will probably surpass them in both brain power and technology. The Greys already know that. The Greys tell that to the contactees, but when they tell them, they're talking 100 million years, a billion years, and we may even surpass the light beings. I mean, after all, we have reptilian, we have our own DNA from our own world. Then we have human DNA, reptilian DNA, and gray DNA inside of our body. We'd probably explain the 3 blood types we got. So you just gotta wonder how many of the stories we were told are wrong. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, say so. In your, you know, from your area of research, do you think that the Greys and reptilians are the only ones that have hybridized, like have a hybridization program with humans?
Well, what it is they're the only 3 allowed to interfere with humans' evolution. The council doesn't allow anybody else here because, one, we're not exactly in a neighborhood friendly place. So when you look at Earth is not in a spiral arm where everybody else lives inside of a spiral arm. That's what. So if you lived in a spiral arm, planets are very close together. Suns are very close together. Some of them have 2 or 3 suns with multiple solar systems interconnecting with each other. But that's not us. We're off the solar system. We're not in the spiral arm. We're actually away from it. So just finding us was a job because we're just out there. We're just alone by ourselves, away from everything where we shouldn't be in the first place. Now, some people do believe that our solar system came from the Sagittarius galaxy when our galaxy started eating it. So the Milky Way right now is eating 5 other galaxies, the biggest one being the Sagittarius galaxy. Well, we know something interesting about the Sagittarius galaxy. There's a lot of red dwarfs surrounding our planet, and they all come from that galaxy. So we're in the middle of them, which suggests that we probably also came from that galaxy. It's a big argument among scientists. They go back and forth on it all the time, if it's true or not true. But there is evidence to suggest that our little planet is not from the Milky Way, which would be even more reason an alien race would want to come visit and say, wow, this is inhabited planets from another galaxy. You ain't going to find that unless you can carry it across. So it's a strange thing. So, well, I see Dolly putting in the Anunnaki blood. That's the very first. So in the very beginning, when they came here to mine our planet and create this species, let me rephrase that, this subspecies of human. So they took, I don't know if it was an ape or something else. Maybe there was something on its way of developing human-like creatures. They took it. Yeah, they took it. They used their own DNA to create a species that could breathe the air on this planet and mine and do things. Well, that species decided that, you know what, we're omnipotent super beings too. Why are we doing this? So they created the human race before us. They created a race just like us, a little shorter, a little stockier. They could procreate. They knew how to make meat. They could plow the fields and stuff. But they never asked why they had to do it, and they never challenged their leaders ever. So then the Nemos talks about the reptilian. So the Egyptians talk about the reptilian used to come down, steal these women, bring these women back, get them pregnant, and then deliver them back to the Sumerians. And those children were different. Those children were aggressive, and they wanted to know why they had to plow the field. So we always thought when the original story came out that they were saying they were different looking, but they weren't. They were a little taller, a little thinner, but they were different. They asked questions. They were like, "No, I'm omnipotent. I'm not omnipotent, but I'm fully sentient."
A bit rebellious. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they were fully sentient, is what it was. Yeah. They realized that they were being used, is what happened. So eventually, when there was enough of them, they created a rebellion. That's what happened to them. So you had the Sumerians, the Mesopotamians, and the Egyptians all were interacting with each other back in the day, and the aliens were interacting with all 3 races. Why they decided to stop interacting in an open fashion is anybody's best guess. I mean, when you look at the Egyptians, you see the human type aliens with the long heads as pharaohs. They seem to be quite open. You see in Mesopotamia too. And then you see even in Mesoamerica with the Toltecs and the Mayans, you see it as well. But then all of a sudden, around the time of Christ's birth, it all seemed to stop. It's like, okay, we're not messing with the humans like this anymore, not in an open fashion. They no longer wanted to be part of the society. See, the Anunnaki, that's the reason people know them, is because they were very open and they were walking around amongst the society. And then there's the big argument is who the Anunnaki are. So if you ask one group, they'll tell you they're reptilians. If you ask another group, they'll tell you they're humans. If you ask another group, they'll tell you they're grays. Now, to me, when people say Anunnaki, I always think of the big humans, the 6 foot, the 9, 8 foot humans with the 6 fingers and 6 toes. That's what I think of when I hear that. Or the daughters or the sons of God, whatever you want to call them. That's what I think of when you hear it. But regardless who they are, we know that Nemos was interacting with the Sumerians, the people the Sumerians created. And remember, the Sumerians talk about the 7 creations of man, with the last one being kind of dumb. That's their words, not mine. But they had also created a bird-like creature, wolf-like creatures. They were trying to create something that could do the job that they wouldn't have to worry about rebelling.
So you're looking into Egyptian stuff like Thoth, and like Isis, like the bird, right? Isis, and you have Anubis, the jackal.
So when you look at the Romans, the Greeks, the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, and the Sumerians, when they talk about these gods, these were probably extraterrestrials. More than and probably not, and they probably weren't little short extraterrestrials either. I would imagine they ran somewhere between 9 foot and 12 foot. A lot of them. So I don't think when humans met them, they kind of were like, oh, okay, who are these people? And for a human, you could only look at them as gods. There was no real other way to look at them. Today, we can look at them as extraterrestrials because we understand more today. But back then, nobody knew what an extraterrestrial was or an alien. Nobody was thinking about that. They did think about people coming from other worlds, but they never thought of being extraterrestrials or aliens or any of that. That came later on. And remember, for some reason, all 3 of the major races, the reptilians, grays, and humans, when Christ came around, they seemed to stop doing things openly. So you can follow all these races up till about 500 years after Christ was born, and then poof, it's like it just goes quiet. It's just shh. Now they were still abducting people and still taking people, but they were doing it on the down low in the QT. They weren't open like they used to be. They didn't feel comfortable enough to be open in society. Now remember, by this time, there was probably 30 million humans living on the planet, 20, 30 million. So this is a big group to have to deal with. This isn't, a few thousand like it was in the early days. Humans had been breeding for 10,000 years or more. And it also seems like our history is much older than what we've been told.
That's for sure.
So I was raised that history was 6,000 years. Whether I was taught it in school or taught it in religion, they were both the same. Now I know for a fact the sunken city off the coast of Cuba is 16,000 years old. We know the 2 cities sunken off the coast of India are 15,000 years old. We know this. So these are cities that were around at the end of the Ice Age. Maybe that's the reason they're underwater, because the Ice Age brought them underwater. But regardless, they existed. These are real cities that you can see for yourself that are much older than any Sumerian or Egyptian or Mesopotamian cities. I mean, that's the 3 oldest races in the day. Everybody always says it's the Sumerians, but the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians are just as old as the Sumerians are. Matter of fact, they should have just been one country, because the way they're set up is you got Sumeria, you got Mesopotamia, and then you got Egypt, and they're all kind of connected in an arch. So they should have all been one country. I don't know why they weren't at the time, but regardless, they weren't. But their religions and their views and all were pretty much the same. So you had these very advanced races for back then. I mean, it looks like the Egyptians might even knew what electricity was 6,000 years ago.
Absolutely.
And you got to wonder, how the hell did they know this? but yet there's pictures of what looks to be light bulbs with wires attached to them. So,
They knew.
and remember, ladies and gentlemen, there are none of the temples built. None of the temples built. There are any scorch marks at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and worse than that, if you would have had 5 or 6 or 7 of these big torches down the hallways because of the way they're built, it would have sucked all the oxygen out of them. Not only killed the people, but put the torches out.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to have used something else. They had to use 2 things. 1, they had to have a way to get lighting in there, and 2, they had to have a way to get oxygen in there. Because if you got 30, 40, 50 guys working in a tunnel that has only one interest, the other end's going to run out of oxygen pretty fast. So it looks different. I mean, when you look at the hieroglyphs, you see things like what looks to be like those accordion tubes, the ones with the ribs on them. Looks like something that would bring air in, like an air conditioning vent tube.
Yeah.
You see those. You see what looks to be like electricity. Now, were the Egyptians smart enough to invent it? I don't know. I know they were smart enough to build the pyramids, but were they smart enough to invent the rest of this stuff? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And before anybody argues with me about the pyramids, I can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Egyptians built the pyramids without any. We worked on this. So just to give you an idea, people always start off with, no way they could make them precision cuts. No way they could make them cuts. Really, y'all know I'm a contractor by trade. So I'm going to give you a little piece of information that Egyptian colleges, they couldn't give you. So if you take a little piece of string, say about an inch thick, and you roll it in diamond dust, and you put somebody on each side doing this, it will cut through stone like butter. And not only will it cut through like butter, but it will leave a nice smooth finish, 1/8 inch thick. Oh yeah. And the reason why people always say, well, you can't find any evidence of what they used to cut it. Well, yeah, because the rope just disintegrated and the little diamond dust went into the sand with the rest of the sand. That's why. So I introduced this to Egyptologists just recently at the Cairo Museum. They flipped out. They were like, "Holy shit! I think you figured it out." And because it answers the question of how were the stones cut. We already know that there were canals built from where they were cutting them to where they were delivered. You can still see the outline of the canals. So we know they used canals to transport them back and forth. We also know, thanks to Khufu or Nufu, whichever one it was, that they used elephants to pull those blocks up the ramps. So now we know we had elephants moving the blocks around. We had diamonds easily cutting through stone, because remember, diamond's much harder than stone is and can cut right through it like we use it today. Matter of fact, a lot of the blades I use to cut any kind of stone are diamond blades. They have little crushed diamonds on them. Yes, that's how they use them. So all the difference is they figured it out way back then, and they just probably used a string because it was easier. And all you had to do is draw a line down the stone and put a guy on each side, or 2 guys or 3 guys, depending on how fast, just doing this and keeping it on that line, and it's going to cut a perfect line every time. Just like using a stone wheel, just like using a real steel wheel with stones on it today. There's no real difference to that. So that kind of did away with how it was cut.
I'd like to see like a modern day experiment with that.
So they did one. They cut a block in half with one in Cairo. It took an hour and a half to cut it through. It was perfect. Clean, pretty, perfect. And it did a bigger stone than what was used in the pyramids. I mean, it cut through it. And wait, the best part is they thought it was going to take like 2 days. It cut through it in just a couple of hours, because diamond is cut so easily through stone. Right. I mean, it just. So but this one was different, because this one was going top to bottom, so you actually had the weight that made it a little bit easier. But yes, I did, Heidi, and that's why I turned it over to the Cairo Museum, because they love it. They're like, oh my God, man, this is just fabulous, because it's a true thing. All you have to do is take a piece of string, roll it in diamond dust. It'll cut anything you want. It'll cut through steel poles. It'll cut through stone. It'll cut through anything. As far as I know, there's nothing diamond can't cut through. And since it's the hardest surface to land, and the Egyptians had lots and lots of diamonds, lots. And they owned diamond mines. So it wasn't even hard for them to get the resources. I was just wondering how they were crushing the diamonds is what I was wondering, how they went about that. I guess they used big stones and dropped them on them or something. But still, They were there. They had them. It was easy to do because remember, to do it right, the diamond dust would all have to have been roughly around the same size, and you would have had to have a glue that when you rolled it, it didn't pop off the string.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine they went through a lot of these because the string, after a while of being pulled on, is going to pop. Depending on what kind of string you use. I don't know what they used back then. They might have used horse's tail or something, so that might have lasted longer. But
horsehair is pretty.
Yeah. So anyway, it goes. This is a unique way, but it's definitely an easy way to cut through stone. And come to find out, they may not have been the only ones that used this technique. Because the thing that kicked me off on it was something I had seen in a Mayan tomb, where they had this circle and the guy was down there cutting, and he was using a stone wheel to cut it with a diamond stone wheel. That's where I got to thinking about it. I said, well, you could just do it on rope. It would be the same effect, and it would be. There's no difference. The only difference is the water wheel, and there was another thing that kicked this off. So in Egypt, found behind 2 houses, they found all these clay jars, water jars, but it wasn't jars for drinking.
Mm-hmm.
They had these long things on them like they were made for pouring above. So while you were cutting the stone, somebody was sitting up there pouring water. So now you even have the jugs that they would have used to pour the water to keep the diamonds cool while they were cutting them. I don't know, guys. It's pretty good. It's going to be hard to get around. I don't know how anybody's going to get around it. Plus, now that we know how to, and remember, they showed you, the modern Egyptians showed you how they stood up stones and how they stood up monoliths by using sand as a lever and letting it pull itself up. So they already knew that. So we knew about the elephants, we knew about the levers, and now we know about the diamonds. I think, I hate when we always say that we're too stupid to do things. Now, when it comes to the electricity and whatever vents they were using, I hate to tell you, I think somebody told them that. I don't, even though we know who was it? Was it the Greeks that knew how to do electroplate? In 2,000 years ago, somebody was electroplating with electricity. They were electroplating gold onto things with electricity. Now they were using 2 jars. They were using like grape juice or something like that to make the electricity, but they were still making electricity. And this was 3,000 years after the Romans. I mean, after the Egyptians. So it's a pretty good idea that the Egyptians had an idea of what, because when you see these tubes, they look about yay long, and they're skinny on this end and fat on the other end. And they have a cap on them, and then they have a wire coming out. And what you see inside looks like an electric eel. That's how it's drawn, as an eel doing a lighting. Like, when the eel lights up, that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
So that would have been a filament in a bulb, people. I'm just saying.
So you don't believe that they had any advanced cultures or advanced?
Oh, no. I think in some things, because we know at least 4 of the pharaohs were probably human aliens because of their heads. Because originally they said it was that disease, but the problem with that disease is it's handed down from generation to generation to generation. Well, we didn't have that. We had the one pharaoh, and then the kids didn't have it. None of the kids had it. And then the other pharaohs that had it before him were not related to him, so they couldn't explain how it got there. And it's the way. So when you see a human up face, when you're looking at a human like this, he looks like us. When he turns his head like this, his head is this much longer than ours is from the back. It's longer and it tilts up a little bit. Well, that's a description they paint of those pharaohs. That's why they said they wore those kind of hats and all that they wore, because they were hiding that. Well, that's the type. And they were taller and thinner, which is what the other aliens usually are. So they were in the 7 foot, 8 foot.
But do you remember when we did an episode of the Gray Zone? We talked about a tomb that was discovered, and I think they went in around in the 70s sometime, and there was a worker within that complex who, I guess, whistle blew to somebody he knew in Russia, and the Russians actually got in via this whistleblower, and when they pulled out, they opened up like a sarcophagus, and apparently I think there was a video, like a really old video that I had found that we watched, and it was a tall, like a tall gray.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. They were definitely there. I don't know when the Greys showed up, because the first hieroglyph of a Gray is about 500 years before Christ. And what's funny about the Greys is when the Greys came on, so the reptilians all around the world were the good guys. The reptilians, I mean, the Mesoamericans thought that. All of the ancient cultures thought that, including the Egyptians. They thought the reptilian, I mean, all the Mesoamericans worshiped them as gods. So they thought they were the good guys. But for some reason, when Christ was born, that changed. They became the evil guys. You know why? Because of Adam and Eve. That's why. Because the reptilian gave us knowledge. So think about this. We know that the reptilians went in and were stealing the women from the Sumerians, and they were coming back smarter, brighter, and faster. So here's the reptilian basically giving them the apple of knowledge, and they took the apple of knowledge, and when they came back, they were smarter and faster and brighter. So the actual thing of Adam and Eve is probably true in that aspect. That's probably how it happened, because remember, that particular fable didn't start with the Christians. It started 4,000 years before the Christians, just like the Great Floods. All of that stuff was written before the Bible was written, before Christ was born. All that stuff was out there. So you have all of that before him. So it looks like there was some intervention. It looks like they created the base race of the humans, and then the reptilians gave us knowledge, made us sentient in the way that we understand sentient today. But it still don't look like the Greys showed up for another 2,000 or 3,000 years after that. And I'm pretty sure the reason the Greys even showed up is because the council said, them two idiots about to get into a war over there on Earth. Get your ass over there and straighten it out, because we don't want any wars.
Well, I think what happened is when the bomb went off, the atomic bomb, especially, like, you have to think every time these things go off, it has to affect, obviously, dimensionally, is like a ripple effect, right? So that's going to attract attention from someone somewhere beyond good old planet Earth, because we know there are multiple dimensions, maybe even multiverses. Like, there's so much more than just what's right here. So for every action, there's a reaction. So every time we do something ridiculous of that sort, I mean, look at even when you have a lot of these nuclear sites that go array or have explosions, there have been crafts seen around them throughout history. Like, when I say history, like our modern history, whenever there's issues, you see these things just show up. Right?
Well, you do, but the thing of it is they've probably been here a lot longer than that, so they were probably witness to what was going on. Meaning that with the humans and the reptilians, they were probably already here when we lit off the first nuclear bomb. Matter of fact, they were probably watching it being created. They were like, okay, well, we're gonna watch these stupid humans blow themselves up, which so far we haven't done, and we do know on a couple of occasions they've actually stopped a nuclear bomb. They haven't stopped a nuclear bomb, but they've stopped.
They shut down your facilities, basically.
Yeah, they shut down a couple of facilities in the United States and in Russia. As far as I know, they never did it anywhere else, but they did do it in the United States and Russia. And it's freaky weird when you think about it, how all of this came to be, how they worked this out, how we all as humans were kind of sitting there watching it go by, mainly because we were too ignorant to really understand what we were seeing.
Right.
I mean, as a race, we knew there was something going on, but we didn't quite understand what it was. We were kind of like, well, this looks interesting, but what is it really? Because when you see giants and stuff walking around, you don't really know where they came from. I mean, God got all the BS for that. He's the one that got blamed for the giants and the sons of God. I mean, the children of God and the sons of the daughters of God were breeding together. So we don't even know what that turned out to be. Maybe that's when the RH negative popped in. It's hard to say because our history isn't correct.
Our history is definitely not correct. You're getting into the bloodlines of prehistoric giants. You know what I mean? Like you're getting into some stuff. You could go all the way back to the Essenes for things like that, and get into a whole really deep. Get into the Gnostic text. It'll teach you. It'll show you all that, what the bloodlines are of prehistoric giants. Question for you there. With all your years of investigations and research, do you have any active example telepathic communication, personal connections with ETs?
Oh, yes. Well, okay. So ICAR teaches dream weaving, and we test for telepathic communication. So we won't even consider you an abductee or a contactee if you're not at least an empath. It's a requirement to actually be considered a contactee. We won't if you're not empathic, we're just thinking you're fully, you know what, and we will just tell you to go on with yourself, because the Greys, the reptilians, and the humans are all three very telepathic. And when they started interfering with our population, how many ever thousands of years ago it was, they've been slowly introducing this into us. So when you look at the Greys, they don't abduct randomly. People always think, oh, well, no, they don't. They abduct inside of family lines. And the reason they abduct inside of family lines is because they're looking for those abilities. A Grey will tell you anytime a contactee can touch their mind as a telepath, they're very impressed by that. They want to see us be able to do that. It's the next step in our evolution. What's funny about this is people with Rh negative blood seem to be much more telepathic than people with Rh positive blood. Not just that, the Rh negative blood seem to be different in a lot of ways versus Rh positive. Plus, they don't share the Rhesus monkey gene. So if you're Rh positive, you share 2% of your DNA comes from a Rhesus monkey. If you're Rh negative, it doesn't. How can that be if we're the same species?
Mm-hmm.
So it's looking more and more like somebody or something intervened somewhere between 40 and 80,000 years ago, 30 and 80,000 years ago, and introduced us to Rh negative. Now, Mother Nature didn't do it because it's a baby killer. If mama's positive and daddy's negative, that baby's going to die. So it couldn't have made 15% of the world's population in 30,000 years if it was killing half the babies it was creating.
I had to take the Rodin shot for sure.
Yeah, and it's Linda did too. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if in the old days, now you youngins, you Z-Geners, and maybe even you millennials don't know about this, but if you're older than that, you had to go in and get a blood test before you got married.
That's true. That's true.
And the reason why is to make sure you and your wife or your husband were compatible and you weren't going to have a stillborn baby because of Rh negative.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what's weird about Rh negative. It does kill babies, but O negative is the purest form of blood known to man. Purest. That's where all of our hematological research comes from. And it's the universal donor. So Rh negative people can donate their blood to anyone. Doesn't matter what kind of blood, doesn't matter how rare your blood is. You can be AB 1.5%. Rh negative can still donate their blood to you. Actually, it's plasma is what it is, not blood, but still, they can donate it to you. But you can't donate it to them. No. So technically, they're the rarest form of blood because they can only take their own blood.
Oh, the golden blood is the rarest.
And Jim, I liked your idea on the. We've done that. Using pressure to cut the stone. We've actually talked about that many times, and what it would take to achieve that kind of pressure, and how you could set it up to make that pressure work. It's actually a good idea, really. So if you use that in stones, man, you have no problem cutting stone. That and diamonds. Well, that and diamond. Well, I know, because if you took a pressurized water and put in it inside of it little flakes of diamond while you were using the pressure, it would even cut even faster. Diamonds, like I said, we use diamond to cut everything. I mean, it's just how it is. I mean, it's pretty much what we use to cut everything is diamond, because it can cut everything. But water is a fabulous way of cutting things, by the way. I mean, we use that for a lot of stuff. My company uses it for a lot of different things. And it's great for doing design work and stuff like that, because you can just set it on a computer and watch it go, and it cuts through like it's butter. It's a great thing. But in this case, because there was no equipment left around, suggesting it could have been water, that's why we went with the diamond theory. Because we can explain why there's no equipment left for the diamonds. We couldn't explain why there wouldn't be any equipment left for the water. So that's why we went with that one. But hey, they're all good theories. But sorry, my dog tried to kill itself. But neither one of those are extraterrestrial. Those are human technologies. And remember, people, Khefu was the dad. Snafu was the son. So he built 3 pyramids, and his son built 3 pyramids. So we have a progression of pyramids. We have the black pyramid, the bent pyramid, and then the regular pyramid. So Daddy
We have
screwed
the
up.
step pyramid.
Yeah. Yeah, so Daddy screwed up like 3 times before he got it right. Son came in and did one kind of half-ass and got the other 2 perfect. So you can actually see the progression in the pyramids being built. Aliens wouldn't have done that. Aliens would have showed us how to do it right the first time. We'd have just built the pyramid and been done with it. So that kind of takes the aliens out of that. But it does not take the aliens out of observing what we were doing, like giving us electricity, giving us ways to get air in there. So they may have realized that the humans had the technology to build this, but not at the rate we'd have done it. We would have had to sacrifice a lot of people, and there would have been scorch marks all over the place. People would have been dying left and right trying to get the pyramids built. Mm-hmm. So by knowing that, it does seem like these are better ideas. Well, I've had people ask the Greys, they won't answer. Reptilians or humans won't answer either. They're like, whatever. They will answer that they've been here for as long as humans have been walking on the planet, but they won't answer anything else. They're stingy. It's Dolly's fault. She probably was over there slapping the reptilian around. It's
Dolly could.
we're blaming Dolly for this, my friend. Yes, wherever she went off to, we're blaming her for it.
So I mean, there is no real theory to the whole prime directive, because there are still a lot of researchers out there that believe in the prime directive with respect to extraterrestrials intervening only to a certain degree.
Actions speak louder than words, so look at it like this. They could have intervened directly, and we'd be a much more advanced race than we are today. Mm-hmm. But we're not. And best we can tell, at least twice in our history, we were set back major. The burning of the Library of Alexandria, most scientists agree, we were set back between 1,500 and 2,000 years when that library burned. And then, of course, when we went through the book burning of the 1500s in the medieval time, they say that set us back another 500 years. So if you go by what scientists would say, we're 2,500 years further back than we should be. We should be 2,500 years further up than we are. Mm-hmm. You figure out where we would be then. I mean, that puts us in deep space. That puts us colonization. That puts us all over the place. Because in less than 100 years, we'll be on Mars full flown with probably 2 or 3 million people. Mm-hmm. We'll be on the moon even sooner than that. Pretty soon we'll be out in the asteroid belts because there's so much money to be made there. And then we'll be out in the Oort clouds and all the moons. I mean, Elon said, so if Elon gets to this asteroid first, he will be worth more than the planet itself 3,600 times. Everything on the planet.
Mining asteroid, yeah.
So it's like $300 billion trillion that one asteroid is worth. Mm-hmm. Just one. Yeah. And there's lots of these out there. So, I mean, when you start thinking about things like that, that makes these guys almost gods in the fact, because when you got that kind of money, who can mess with you?
Here's the thing realistically, aside from, cataclysm happening to our planet, which it's going to happen. It's inevitable. I mean, you just look at the planets around us. It has happened. We're not going to be any different. However, with that being said, why are we so damn anxious to get off the planet? I mean, we might be here 10,000 years from now. We might be gone in 3 years. You know what I mean?
That's why Gaia said, "You evicted. What's taking so long?"
No, but again, though, with that being said, like, there are depths. Heidi said it earlier. There are depths of our oceans that we have never explored. We don't know what's down there, and there's speculation that there could still be prehistoric life down there that floats around. Some of this stuff just floats to the surface. They die, they float up. That's it. For the longest time, we're like, oh my God, the Kraken and blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, giant squid started surfacing. Like, there's so much down there that why are we not exploring our planet? Why are we not getting into these caves that go way down and see what's down there? You know what I mean? Like, why are we so hell bent on getting off this planet?
Because we know it's coming. Deep down, every human alive on this planet today knows we need to be off this planet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's built into us. Whatever created us, put that into us.
Right.
So think of it this way: the Egyptians built all these artifacts that date back to 12,500 years, 15,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Angkor Wat did the same thing. Stonehenge did the same thing. Easter Island did the same thing. These all point to constellations 6,000 years before they were built.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, first off, you have to understand precession to even do that, because the planet wobbles. You have to go backwards in time to do that. Now, the Egyptians were pretty damn smart when it came to astronomy, so I'm not going to hate on them for this. They mapped the Earth within 2 degrees with no computers. They mapped the Earth within 2 degrees. That's seriously good math. The Chinese mapped it within 4 degrees. I mean, both of these, that's seriously good maps. And they're not the only ones. There's a couple other races out there that did it too.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Mesoamerican races did it. So we had a great understanding of astronomy. And since then, we've been wanting off the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's either something coming or something coming or something coming. And it looks like something's coming. So if we do it in science, so in 4.4 billion years, the sun's going to go red dwarf and kill us all. That's a long time. But we're not going to live that long, because in less than a billion years, all the atmosphere on this planet will be gone. So we have 900 million years to get our shit together and get off this planet, or figure out how we're going to save the oxygen on the planet. But
there are theories
it goes,
that this could happen literally like much sooner.
It could happen much sooner.
Right.
So as a species, we need to diversify. We need to get off the rock. We need to know that we can live in other worlds. Now, 500,000 years from now, we'll have technology. Even if the atmosphere goes, we'll probably be able to still live here. But do you want to live on a barren rock? Because once the atmosphere goes, it's going to be just dirt. And we're going to look like Mars or any other raggedy planet. So is that what we want? And can we stop it? Well, we have learned, get this. So you know how we all been bitched at about carbon in the atmosphere, carbon this, carbon that? Well, we've learned that the carbon should be in the atmosphere because it helps the animals and the vegetables to create oxygen to keep the air pure. It also keeps the atmosphere heavier, so it's harder to rip it away. So the thing they've been telling us is killing us is what's saving us. You figure that one out. It's sometimes science is its own worst enemy. And in this case, it seems to be that, because, I always hear how, people always tell me about, it's global warming is going to kill us. Really? You do know when the dinosaurs were living, there was no ice on the planet at all, none. Vegetation was ungodly out of control on the planet. It was 2 or 3 times as thick as it is today because of the amount of carbon on the air. And the atmosphere oxygen was almost 2% higher. Matter of fact, they said if humans were alive, a lot of us would be getting dizzy walking around because it's that much higher, enough to make you kind of loopy and goofy. In other words, we couldn't have lived with the dinosaurs. We'd have been stupid.
Well, I mean, you have the mass population that we have that's going to take up oxygen. You have the pollution. You have, the amount of people that were here just breathing. Like, I mean, there's a lot more than what during that time period.
Well, but there's not more dinosaurs in it. There's not more humans than there were dinosaurs. And the dinosaurs took more oxygen because they were bigger, had bigger lungs, breathed harder. So you had to have all that carbon to produce all that extra oxygen.
But we have billions of people and less vegetation. So there's less producing.
But let's not forget where the majority of the oxygen comes from. It comes from the ocean, from plankton. That's where 85% of all of our oxygen comes from. So what humans don't understand is they're always talking about, we kill the rainforest, we kill this. No, that's not true. But if we kill the convection currents in the ocean, we've killed ourselves. So if the ice melts enough to desalinate that water and bring it more fresh, it'll stop the current between south and north. and we'll all die because there won't be nothing carrying that plankton back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
We'll die. We'll die from lack
Captain
of
Paul
oxygen.
Watson always said that if the ocean dies,
Yeah.
we die.
Yeah. So that's because that's where most of our oxygen comes. See, when I was a kid growing up, we were always taught the rainforests is what gave us
Yes.
the oxygen. But then
Yes.
they realized, oh no, there's not enough rainforest to keep us all alive. So they
Mhm.
rechecked it out and they realized that the plankton in the ocean what was keeping us alive.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
it's now we know that. Now we know that we can control that somewhat.
Mhm.
But as the ice melts, the water gets more desalinated. The more
Mhm.
fresh water that gets in there, more of a chance we have
Mhm.
of getting killed. Now, for some reason, and nobody knows why, the Antarctic just started growing ice
I
back.
was just about to say Antarctica. Get out of my head.
It just started growing ice, and not just at a little rate, at a massive
Yeah.
rate.
Yeah, it's gone the other way. Because do you remember even a couple years ago there was a concern because it was melting, and now all of a sudden it's gone the other way. It's
But
flipped.
you and I in the gray zone busted them one time because we found out there was a volcano under the ice.
Mm.
So, ladies and gentlemen, in the Antarctic, there's actually an active volcano under the ice in the Antarctic because no one could understand why the ice was melting the way it was. And then they found this. And what led them to it is it was creating a thing so that the ice over the water was only making thin sheets. It was making a lot of ice, but it was only making thin sheets, and they couldn't figure out why.
Mm.
Then they found this volcano, and they were like, "Oh shit!" Now I don't know if this volcano stopped or something's just changed. Just saying the currents have changed. The current coming across Argentina has changed, and the wind has changed. So everything's colder there now. So they're hoping it's going to be a long term thing. And if it is, well, the southern hemisphere is safe. It's just us people in the northern hemisphere, which is where the majority of people live, unfortunately. Maybe we'll have to have a rule and send them down to Australia. Y'all moving Australian people in Argentina, get out. Get out.
I'd
You're
go to
kicked, you're evicted.
Argentina or Australia in a
I'm going to
heartbeat.
New Zealand. The hell with y'all. I'm going to New Zealand.
TK422 says, I wonder where the atomic oxygen came from.
There's a lot of stuff on this planet.
Mr.
I wonder where it
Science.
came.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of stuff I wonder where it came from on this planet. So we know there's been asteroid impacts of different types over the years.
Yeah.
And not just little ones.
Yeah.
So when you get in like the moon, so the moon's a weird thing. First off, we think it's hollow because NASA crashed that thing into it and it rang for hours. Literally, the damn thing rang for hours. No one expected that when we crashed that probe into the moon. No one expected it. They expected it to be a big rock, and it might not be as big rock as we thought it was.
Yeah.
And then there's another weird odd. The Mariner Range on the moon fits perfectly into the canyons on the Pacific Ocean. Don't ask me. It's almost like it was parked there for a while and then it pulled out. So more than likely what happened is something hit us, something big hit us. It molded and melded around and then it popped loose and became the moon. Because remember, the moon is moving away from us 2 inches a year, which means it had to have be forced. So at one time it was part of Earth and then it was pushed out. It popped loose. And ever since then, it's been moving steady 2 inches. So generations in a million years won't have a moon. Or if they do, it's going to be way the hell out there. It's not going to be like it is today. And that's another problem because the moon does what? It creates what? Tidal. Without tides, we're in trouble yet again. This planet is very fragile in the way it was designed. And it's humans. Humans are just pigs and we need to learn how not to be pigs. There's a lot. And as far as I can see, and anybody can contest it, but as far as I can see, ET's not here to save us.
Yeah.
At least not the majority of us. Every time you ask an extraterrestrial about, they always say, well, they don't need to know. So as far as ET's concerned, when disclosure comes, they've already disclosed to everybody they need to disclose to, and they're talking about contactees because they know. The rest of the people on this planet, they don't care if they know.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit, which makes me worried, makes me think that they're cannon fodder whenever it comes, whatever comes. And then you've got the problem with the ones having the Holocaust dreams, which suggests something entirely different. It worries me.
That one's interesting because I know a lot of people who get those.
Yes, because what freaked me out about the Holocaust dream, I remember I got the first one. This is 20, almost 30 years ago.
Mhm.
I get a phone call and she's telling me about it. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. You should write a freaking book out of that. I mean, it was
Mhm.
good. Man. So
Mm.
I'm at work. I'm doing a job. The lady walks up behind me and she said, I heard you talking on the radio tonight. She said, I didn't know you was into UFO stuff. I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. She said, I had this weird Holocaust dream. And she starts telling me it's almost identical to the other girls, except it's a different city.
Mhm.
So I've got at least 30 cities where this has happened in our country, probably another 30 cities in other countries. And it's almost always the same thing. They roll up, everything's working, the cars are parked, the lights are on, you're looking in the businesses, the lights are on. The eight now, this tells you it's in the future because they always tell you the same thing. You'll walk up to a door and an AI face will pop on and start talking about the last thing you bought. Or would you
Mhm.
like to buy this thing you were searching for? I always start laughing. I said, for all you people who are surfing porn, it's going to be embarrassing when you walk up to the thing and it says,
Uh-oh.
oh, yeah, it's Pornhub. That was the last thing you looked at. I'm thinking, not a good thing.
No.
But they all talk about this now. That's banned in this country right now. As a matter of fact, it's not just banned in this country; it's banned all over the place. They don't want that. So AI can be used for a lot of things, but they want it used for that for some reason.
Hmm.
So,
Well,
so that tells.
it's always listening. I mean,
Oh yeah, it is.
there's
Oh man,
technology
so
that
it was
shows
funny
that,
last night.
hands down.
I was bitching at Siri. I mean, I was bitching at Alexa last night, and I said Siri's better, and she says thank you because she's sitting on the floor next to my bed. I'm like, bitch, shut up, nobody's talking to you. It's and wait, there's been times while we
Mhm.
were live on air that Siri and Alexa will start talking to each other. And one
See?
night, Jay was on Google. My Siri started talking to Google. I guess Alexa felt upset and started talking to her. I was like, "Oh no, come on! This is too much. I mean, this is just
I don't have an Alexa, and I have my Siri turned off. Not that the phone still doesn't listen because, it
well. What
does.
we do is we what we do is if it's going to be a serious conversation, it's
Yeah,
not in a room where they're available to listen
yeah.
because I don't care if they're on off. Because I had her
Mhm,
muted with the red light on one day, and when I turned the red light back on, she instantly answered a question that was asked while the red light was on. So I was like,
mhm,
oh well, this ain't working. So we moved
mhm.
all of that. So when we actually had two rooms in the house that you can go in and talk. And the way this house was
Like a
built,
free zone?
yeah, well, the way this house was built, it has steel girders at the top
Mhm.
for hurricanes,
Yeah.
and it blocks out uh, radio waves and stuff.
Mhm,
Matter of fact, it interferes with them. Like this room, I can't even use my cell phone back here. It won't let it out.
mhm,
It just gets to like, no, you can't call from here.
mhm.
Um, yeah, well, aliens love us all, people. Yeah, they want to take y'all all to Alpha Centauri and serve. I mean, have y'all for lunch or dinner or something.
Oh my
Literally.
goodness. Oh my goodness. You
So,
know what I
see, they
find
won't eat
interesting?
me because I'm too high in cholesterol, so they won't eat me. But you little skinny fuckers, you better watch out. I'm just warning y'all ahead of time.
Yeah. See, I got people talking about Gilgamesh. Isn't it interesting? Because Michael's mentioned it. Isn't it interesting that there's this conspiracy going around? And apparently there's documents you can find online where Miss Hillary C, shall we say, had
Yes.
actually put down um, that she wanted troops when I guess when they went into Iraq to secure the tomb of Gilgamesh. It's very, very important to her
Well,
to
they said
secure this.
They said Daddy Bush was over there looking for the Stargate. And
Right.
they said that's the reason why Bush went back and started a war in two countries because they weren't sure what country it was in.
Mhm.
And obviously, we didn't find it because even though we ended the war in Iraq, we didn't end the war in Afghanistan until
Mhm.
the crazy
Mhm.
guy did it.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's things there when you read the
It's
ancient
ancient
text there.
history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you read the ancient text, there seems to have been things that were deposited in the Middle East, whether it was Sumerian, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Persian. There just seems to be stories that suggest this, like the jinn, the genie, the flying carpets. There seems to be a lot of this all throughout their history.
Right.
So
Right.
I always had this rule when I tell people ask me all the time, you're a ufologist, where should I start searching?
Mhm.
You always should start in the ancient world because anything flying more than 300 years ago has got to be interesting. Because there was nothing, no kind of technology that we possessed more than 300 years ago that could fly. And the only thing we had 300 years ago was hot air balloons.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've seen winged anything, and so there's several things in Britain that happened in 1600, 1500, 1400. There's a bunch of stuff. When you go look at the ancient artwork from the biblical artwork, you see all kind of UFOs in it. You see here's Mary holding Jesus, and in each thing there's a UFO up there with a person in it. Not a demon, not an alien, but a person. And then there's all kind of, there's the Persian one about they had the city had been under siege for 3 years. When out of the blue, a shield came up. They called it shield looking. It was glowing blue. It came up and it just blew the gate apart and allowed the army in. What's funny about that, I shouldn't say what's funny, but what's interesting about that is both the invading and the conquered both report the incident exactly the same way. Something appeared in the sky, blew the gates apart, and allowed them in. Because remember, they had been trying to get in for 3 years. They couldn't get in. And bam. And this isn't the only time that this has happened. There's also Mesoamerican accounts of this.
Yeah, and they were talking Sodom and Gomorrah may have been the same sort of situation.
Yeah, so
the way everything was hit, you know.
But it does look like, at least in several places in Persia and in the Greek Empire, maybe even in the Roman Empire, that this had happened and happened more than once. And then there's things like the Roman concrete that even today we still can't reproduce. Now they think they finally found the formula, though. So they're going to test it out this year. And they found some old hieroglyphs somewhere, or some writing somewhere. I think it was in the Temple of Delphi. It was under a rock. Well, it was actually under a tile. They were moving tiles around. I guess they were trying to redo something in it, and they found it. So now they're pulling all the tiles up in the Temple of Delphi to see if there's more stuff on it. Anybody don't know who Delphi was? She was, well, I shouldn't say she was.
Oracles. They were oracles. Delphi is a place.
Yeah, it's Greece. A place. And there was multiple oracles there. There was always the head oracle, but it lasted for a while. It was there for a while. It wasn't like just overnight kind of thing. Remember, the Roman Empire lasted for 2,000 years, people. It was a long,
Yeah. They reflect the people that are at the top seats there. And we know they're all very, very interested in the topic of the Anunnaki, 100%.
Yes, it was so much that they were looking for back in the day, and kings and all kind of people went. Well, just recently we had did a show on the origin of Jesus, not the biblical part of Jesus, just a man. I want people to get confused, because people get mad at me and I want them to get confused. So we were looking for evidence of the man, not the God, just the man, where he was, where he went. Well, we found him in several places. We found out that he went and visited a king in Persia, because the king was sick. He had all over Rome. Matter of fact, there's several writings from Roman governors writing to Caesar saying what we should do. And Caesar said, just leave him alone. If you do anything, it's going to make him a martyr. So they didn't. The Romans never messed with him. Even when he went back home and he was crucified, the Romans didn't do it. The Romans let the Jews do it. He said he made them pick who was going to get crucified. They didn't pick.
Jesus traveled with his uncle Joseph of Arimathea, and they went all over, as high even as where the Celts resided, which was up in.
He spent time. Well, they say he spent time.
Schools. He was in the mystery schools.
Well, he say he also spent time with the people in Tibet. It's just he was gone for 20 years. People, he was just roaming around. Nobody knew where he was, but actually that's not true. The church says they don't know where he was, but there's actually history of Jesus, so you can actually find him. And there's some parts of it, like when you read in the Roman part, they say he was traveling with a woman. There's a couple of times they said he was traveling with a woman and kids. So was this his wife and children? So we don't know, because we weren't actually there. But all of this stuff is fascinating. And then one of my favorite things is in the cave where he was found, in the back corner, there's a little picture about this big, and guess what it was? It looked just like a little gray.
Well, funny that.
Yeah, it's funny that.
Lovely, no. Reflective in most, the feedback that we hear about demons and angels are spiritual, good, bad, and what politicians are saying, that they're finding that the ET have the same type of religious text. And Mormon teachings, yes, on the Mormons, big time. They have a lot of knowledge that they keep fairly at bay,
Hidden.
so to speak. But the teaching said Jesus even came to North America. Yes, scoffed at it for a year, but it's plausible he was engaged to portals and dimensions. Yes, on that, but the ancients also traveled and had means of traveling to this side of the world. People don't realize, like, there were a lot of ways where they could
Well, we
have.
know about the mariners and which were
Oh yeah,
10,000 years before
yeah,
anybody else. They had
yeah,
charted pretty much the whole planet. Nobody even knows what kind
yeah,
of boats they were using, but we know because things they left
yeah.
out. We also know that the Vikings were here 1,000 years before Columbus, and then we found out just recently there was somebody here before him. So
Mhm,
it looks like the Americas were found 3 or 4
mhm,
thousand years ago, and
mhm,
just were forgotten, found. I guess
mhm,
it's really weird, but it's like the Mesoamericans. Everybody says, "Oh, Mesoamerican, Native American, same thing." Well, no, they're not really.
mhm,
It looks like so whatever happens, whenever it has happened, and they came over the land bridge. It looks like they came over and went straight down the
mhm,
coast to the bottom of South America, and then
mhm,
started working their way back up. But it looks like there was another group that came over another land bridge later on that settled in North America and Canada. It's not the same group. And when you
mhm,
put them side by side, Native Americans next to Mesoamericans, they don't look alike.
mm,
And we found that in Mesoamerica that there is a whole species down there that their brain skulls are shaped differently than ours are. Well, how in the hell can that be? It's just like the blood thing. There are things that are happening in our society that suggest that we're mutating into something else. Maybe
mhm,
mutation's a bad word, but the human race is evolving to whatever the next level is, and telepathic abilities is going to be part of that.
mhm,
People, if you ever want, because all my friends always used to tell me everybody's telepathic, and I'm very hardcore that they're not. So I always challenge people on this because this is an easy thing. Go get 4 cards or 2 cards. Get a red and a blue one. Green. It doesn't matter. Get 2 colored cards.
mhm,
Set them down on. I get a deck because if you're going to do this with a lot of people, you don't want anybody cheating. But set them down. You know what they are. Look at the
mhm,
individual, and this is an easy test. And see if they get it right. What you're going to
mhm,
find, and this is going to be depressing when you find this out, is they're going to get it less than 50-50. It's like flipping a nickel. You keep flipping
mhm,
it. You should get it at least 50-50, right? Law of averages. Nope. You're actually going to get it
mhm,
less than the law of averages. So
mhm,
if you're a true telepath, and you're going to know what those cards are every time they set them down. And we
mhm,
have run across it. Hey, Wayne, we have run across a few like that.
mhm,
But in general, the majority of people we meet are not telepathic. And empaths are easy to test for. So empaths are not as strong as telepath. Well, that's not really true. They're not psychically as strong. In other words, they can't read your mind, but they can feel your mind.
mhm,
Empaths are interesting, but that's the first thing we expect when iCard does a research on you. If you call us and say, I've been taken by aliens, or I'm an abductee, or I'm a
mhm,
contactee, we're going to introduce you to one of our empaths to see
mhm.
if you're truly empath. Like Michelle, she's an empath. She's a pain in the ass sometimes. Uh, when you get to know people and you're empathic, you can be popping in and out of each other's heads without thinking about it. It can be a
That's
pain in the
more
ass.
telepathic, though.
That's both.
Um,
So
mhm,
to put it in perspective, you can transmit your feelings to someone, whatever
mhm,
they are. You can also receive their feelings. So that is in a way it's the same as being telepathic. But the difference with a telepath is you actually get the message in a word form
mhm,
or in a thought form. So like, hey Michelle, what are you doing? You crazy? What are you up to? When an empath, it's going to be more like you're just going to sense and feel the individual's
yeah,
emotion.
yeah, mhm,
Like, oh, I don't like you, or I like you, or you're a pain in the ass, or you're a bitch, whatever. You can
mhm,
actually sense that. And
mhm,
the problem is for most contactees or abductees is they don't know they're empathic. So you
mhm,
walk into a building and you're in an office and everybody's in a pissy mood. Well, you instantly get in a cranky mood because you're now sensing all these cranky people. But if
mhm,
you're a broadcaster and let's say you're happy and in goofy mood and you
mhm,
walk into a room full of cranky people, guess what?
mhm.
They're going to be happy people afterwards.
It's true. Yeah, you're just manipulating the
It's
the
it's it's
space.
it's 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 tough, but we test for it because we need to know if someone's legit or not. And I think it's just a gift from the extraterrestrials or the
Mhm,
original whenever they originally screwed with us, it's just a gift. And I think they expect us to be developing it.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, ladies and gentlemen, the Air Force and the Navy got rid of their remote viewing program and opted for a telepathic program. So if you're a good telepath, you can go make 300 to 400K a year with the military. Now, I don't know if you want to do that or not.
No.
But you can try. You can try.
No. So Michael makes an interesting comment about AI, feeling that we'll give birth to biological engineer AI that will allow us the ability to type in our own telepathic abilities, and that might be a part of an actual natural evolution. That scares the shit out of me. Imagine just downloading an app and how easy it would be to have an ability given you based on an update. But that's pretty much you have an integration going, and I don't know that I would want to do that.
Well, so look at it from a different point of view. You know, Elon Musk has the neurochip.
Crazy, yeah.
So the neurochip allows you to do a lot of things. So that neurochip, when it's in your head, you can run your entire computer without ever touching anything. Remember, he made these for crippled people because so your whole computer, everything. So eventually that will work with everything. All of our stuff will be made to work for like that. So you'll be able to walk in your house and think about it. Your house will turn on you. You're sitting on your couch. You feel cold. Your air conditioner goes down on its own. You feel hot. It goes up on its own because it's picking up your empathic or telepathic abilities. This is in the near future, people. This ain't even the far future.
Heidi says, what is someone who just recently thinks that the experience they've had through life aren't just high strangers, but possibly has been contact, or perhaps these people are experiencers?
Well, experiencers. Okay, so first off, you would be an abductee. You wouldn't be an experiencer. Experiencers are someone who are familiar with what's going on in their life, just like a contactee. An abductee is someone who has a bunch of weird shit happening to them, but they can't quite figure out what it is. They think it might be alien or they think it might be spiritual, because sometimes people think these are attachments or other things when it's extraterrestrial. You got to remember, Michelle and I have talked about this on many shows, and I've talked about this in other shows with other people. There are crossovers. So so this is a perfect example. A poltergeist is a crossover, because when you hear about a poltergeist, oh, it's throwing stuff around the room, it's doing all these things. Well, abductees talk about the exact same thing when the aliens are coming for them. The toys start talking, they start flying around the room, they start doing all kinds of stuff. You place them side by side, they're almost identical, but they're not really, because one is created by a ghost, or not a ghost, but
it's a projection of energy.
And the other one, and the other one is basically really a projection of energy, just controlled by an extraterrestrial. But there are this kind of the same thing. So, you have to be aware when you're in these fields, because I always told people, if you're in the paranormal field, you're more than likely an abductee, whatever. So we'll do it the old fashioned way. Way back when you're young, you get these weird senses. You might be into vampires and dragons, and as life progresses, you might try 4 or 5 or 6 different types of religions. And as life progresses more, you might get back into these and get into witchcraft and all sorts of stuff, because you're looking for answers, because you're an abductee. But you're not going to find the answers there, because that's not what is going on. But it drives a lot of people into those fields searching, because you're looking. You're trying to figure out what's going on in your life. So it drives people into that. I have never met a true researcher that's a paranormal researcher that's not a contactee, or I should say abductee. Not one. Now, I've met a lot of them who are just idiots that are just in the field looking because they're bored. But people who really have the talent, they're an abductee for sure.
I think people don't just get into it because they're bored. I think people have a general healthy curiosity as to what's
happening. There's a driving factor, that's what I'm saying. If there's a driving factor, you're probably an abductee. If there's not a driving factor, if you're doing it because your friends are doing it, or because you've seen it on TV and it looked cool, you're not an abductee. But if there's a driving factor to it, if something is driving you to look for these ghosties, then more than likely you're an abductee, because it's one of the things. You go on websites, we have a bunch of lists of how this works out, but people go through phases when they're looking, when they've been contacted, or when they've been taken, because they don't know what it is. It's in their head, it's craziness, and you want to think it's something paranormal, because that's the less of the two. Think about that part. You would rather be talking about ghosts than aliens. So did people consider ghost chasing or demon chasing less dangerous than alien chasing, which
I've
I
had
think it is.
people, especially people of a very high religious faith, say that they draw the line at ghosts and demons, but because it's part of religion teaches you about that.
Mhm.
On an average, many do, but they draw the line at extraterrestrials. Yet, when you look into, like, especially the Old Testament, you look at the Book of Enoch, you look at like Ezekiel's wheel, you look at Elijah, like there's so much there that talks about
Well, so
something
what happens? What
of
happens
that sort.
if Jesus turns out to be an astronaut? That wipes out religion as we know it.
Because well, we're all aliens technically. If you're saying we all come from Mars, besides that,
So well, yeah, but I mean, if Jesus turns out to be an extraterrestrial,
hmm
that means more than likely what the Muslims are following are probably also extraterrestrials.
hmm
Then that changes the way we look at everything
hmm
because we can no longer look and say, "Oh, this was God." We have to stop and say, "No, this was an extraterrestrial." And what was this? See, right now it's God. You're going to accept it for what it is and its motivations for what it is, love and peace. But if it's an extraterrestrial, you don't know if that's its motivations anymore.
hmm
You have to stop and think, "Oh, well, maybe it's not its
hmm
motivations."
yeah,
So it's hard to say, and we also know that grays, just like reptilians, their consciousness can be removed. So if Jesus died and his consciousness was moved and uploaded into a new body, like the grays do all the time or the humans do all the time, then
hmm
that would have looked like a miracle to us, but it would have just been common practice to them.
hmm hmm
So and there's the other problem: 92% of all miracles performed now humans can perform. So if you've ever go watch the movie The Late Great Planet Earth, and when the end's coming, you'll find out that 92% of everything they said was going to happen has happened.
hmm
And humans can perform almost all of that. So
hmm
that doesn't make us gods, does it? And within 50 years or 100 years, every miracle performed in the Bible, humans will be able to reproduce. But that doesn't make us gods, does it? We
hmm
all know we're not gods. We all know we're idiots. But yet we can reproduce all of that. So then you have to stop and think, okay, the only thing we haven't been able to reproduce is when really the real God, not Jesus, but the real God created Earth and all the animals and everything else. But then we know that's not actually how it happened either. We know it didn't happen in 7 days. We know it happened in 4.5 billion years
hmm
because we actually have a law going through science. So all of this stuff makes it really, really, really hard to know exactly what it is you're looking for. I tell people all the time, if believing in God makes you feel as snug as a bug in a rug, you should. Whatever
hmm
gives you that sense of I feel secure and happy and loved, you should be doing. Unless you're killing people, you can't do that, okay, people. But all the rest of it, you can do.
hmm
It's it's
yeah,
uh, it's what it is, and it's somebody was telling me about the devil the other day. So I said, "What are you talking about? Are you talking about Satan? Or are
hmm
you talking about the devil? Are you talking about Beelzebub?" "Oh, it's all the same thing." I said, "Are you sure it's all the same thing?" I said, "When you listen to people talk, it doesn't sound like it's the same thing, especially in history. They seem to
hmm
be different entities."
hmm
Um, well,
yeah,
they, talk about Satan as being the son of God or one of the archangels, sorry,
hmm
which just would have been an extraterrestrial. There's nothing that the archangels do that ET can't do. And think of it this way. So I'm in DC a couple of years back, and I'm speaking with Monsignor Balducci. He's way up in the Catholic Church. So we're talking. I had Piola Harris translating for us because I speak this much Italian,
hmm
and so we're talking, and he comes out with, "Well, no, the Vatican." His words: "The Vatican and the Pope believe that extraterrestrials are closer to God than we are." His
hmm
words. He said, not just a little bit closer, but a lot closer. One, he said, because they're so much older than us, they've understood his teachings for so much longer. A billion-year race versus a million-year race or 2 million-year race, that's a big difference in understanding.
hmm
And that's really where they are. But the other two races, he said, seem to be the same way. He said he believes that the major three races that visit his planet, his words, I didn't even say anything about three races, by the way.
hmm
He said this. that the Vatican believes that they're much closer to God than we are. He said, but the Greys being closer than anybody out there to God.
Mm-hmm.
So I was so, I took him at his word because, he's Monsignor. So I was meeting with the Vatican's astronomer about 3 weeks after that. I had a meeting with him actually for something else. And we got to talking about it. He said, oh, no, that's what they believe, Joe. He said, when they told me that the first time, I was taken aback. He said, I didn't think there was anything close to it. He said, but the Vatican definitely believes in extraterrestrials. He
But they
said,
do. Mm.
there is no doubt. He said, he has no doubt that they don't believe they've been here and messed around in our society. And he said, he said, from what we understand, they definitely believe in our God, or maybe we believe in their God. He said, it's hard to say how that worked out. He said, but still,
Mm-hmm.
he said, still, that seems to be where we are in the grand scheme of things. So when you start hearing stuff like that, it takes you back. You have to stop and go, wait a minute now. The church knows they're here, and the church believes that they're closer to God than they are.
Mm-hmm.
So then it drops you back to, was Jesus an astronaut? Was he put here by them to help to try to calm everything down?
It's really
And
hard to say. I mean, I think it really depends on, technically speaking, a lot. If what
I
you're
know it.
saying is correct, I'd love to know his blood type personally. But if what you're
Yeah,
saying
I would
has,
too. It's
has any validity with respects to, some people being more enlightened, or some people just having extrasensory abilities due to having contact with ET, or due to being, hybrids and such. It would be
so
interesting to know.
when you meet RH negative people, you find out that they are more telepathic and empathic in general than RH positive. But in general, their IQ is higher. But it's worse than that because they have a mutation of that green and blue eyes. So I challenge this to people all the time. Start watching TV, people. You're going to notice the majority of your politicians, the majority of your movie stars and singers have blue or green eyes. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, green eyes makes up 2% of the world's population, with a full 20% of politicians and movie stars. Blue eyes, which is only about 10 or 12%, well, 6 to 12, depending on who you want to believe, makes up almost 70% of politicians and 50% of movie stars.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, so those two combinations are 12% between the two of the 8 billion people who live here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a billion people out of 8 billion have the other 7 billion seem to be what? Less? How can that possibly be?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Mm-hmm.
is that? We do know for 2 million years that people on this planet were brown-eyed, brown-skinned, brown-haired for 2 million years. Because there was no RH negative, there was no mutations. That's what they were. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, excuse the pun, out of the blue, RH negative came along and created mutations, which created green and blue eyes and a couple of other varieties. I hate to leave out the other varieties, even because they're so small. Well, no, Johnny, red eyes is a real thing. It's just like 0.1% or some crap. Then there's a purple or a maroon, but it's also about 0.1%. Green is a flat 2%. It's just what they are. It's a rare thing, and being green eyed and O negative blood is extremely rare. Did you know less than 1% of the world's population has that? Why?
Yeah.
I know a few of them that are got green eyes and O negative blood.
Yeah.
See, I got to be honest with y'all. When this research came out, I got paranoid because I got O negative blood. So I got paranoid. I was telling Linda, I don't like this idea, man. This is sounding like we're being played with or experimented on or something. It's like, oh, let's leave this part of the population alone and screw with this part. It made me nervous, but over the years, I've learned that it has benefits to it.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end of the show already. It's already been like an hour and a half, and it's been interesting, and looks like it may open a door to a part 2.
Yes, well, we'll talk about 20 and people. And I'm serious. I know all y'all are saying, but it's telepathic. Just go test them for yourself. This is why I always tell people to do this for themselves. That way, I don't have to argue with them about it. Once you do this for yourself, you're going to be like, shit, Joe is right. It's and look, I didn't want to be right. I wanted to be wrong on this. When we first started this study 30 years ago, I wanted to be wrong because I got a lot of friends I wanted to be telepaths, and turned out that they just weren't. It's sad. I want the whole world, but hey, one day we will all be telepaths, and then we'll all kill each other because we'll all be in each other's heads and saying, do you want to be in my head? Trust me, people, you do not want to be in my head. It is scary up in there.
Yes, it is.
You do not want to be in there. So one day when we all mature, I don't know, 50 million years from now or something, we can all get in each other's heads. It'll bring world peace when it happens. It'll either bring world peace or world destruction, one or the other. It just depends when it happens. If it was to happen tomorrow, it would be the end of the world.
Oh my gosh.
It'd be adios. First place we go would be Canada too, by the way.
Oh my goodness. Well, Kathy, hold that thought for open mic tomorrow night on the Outer Realm. We have come to the end, of course, of our Beyond the Outer Realm segment, and definitely interesting. And like I said, didn't know where it was going to go, but here we are. We've touched on a lot of things, and it's got the whole chat room going what and going on and on. And again, maybe chime in. We can do like I said, a part 2, or just chime in for open mic tomorrow. It's going to be a whole lot of different things going on. So big thank you to Joe Montaldo for our uncensored open mic. Next week, guys, we've got Luke Eastwood returning. You guys might remember him from talking about Scotia, the Pharaoh's daughter, who basically founded Scotland. Well, he's coming back to talk about druids and ancient religions. So that's next week. Tomorrow night, Wayne and I, my guest co-host, is coming on. We have a whole other lineup of information to share for open mics. It'll be a lot of fun. But tonight, check us out on Paranormal Heart Podcast because Kat is going to be interviewing us on what it was like to be living in our haunted home. And it is sold. But I'm going to dig out some photos. Not so much ghostly photos, but everybody's always been curious because it's been on TV a lot, and they're basically just curious to see what the interior of this place used to look like because we no longer
They
have it.
just want to know how Elvira of Canada lived. That's all. Don't lie.
She lived well. Let's put it that way, and continues to do so. Thursday night, guys, Nathaniel Gillis returns to explore golems and the homunculus. Homunculus. Did I say that right? Either way, it's freaky deaky stuff. Let me tell you, freaky deaky. So, anyway, thank you all for tuning in, and thank you, Joe. And watch for those Gray Zone episodes. They're coming, and we'll see you all hopefully tonight in Cat's chat room on Paranormal Heart, which is 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central. And we're there for 1 hour only. Live show, not pre-record. Anyway, goodbye on this side of the world, and good night on the other side of the world. Thank you all for tuning in with us.